Good morning. I'm Todd Hougaard, and this is Marc White, and we're with Mortgage, Cadence, and Accenture Company. So last year, in the real estate finance industry, they originated just under $2 trillion in financing for people that wanted to either buy or refinance a home. Well, how were most of the communications done for those transactions? Email. Good old-fashioned, insecure, public network-based email. Of course, that's a problem. Certainly a significant security problem, as we well know within the industry, but it's also a processing and productivity problem if you've got to have people reading every single email message that goes through. So today what we're going to show you is the private network for the entire real estate finance industry. And we call that product Collaboration Center. Now, Collaboration Center is based on a couple of key premises. The first premise is that if you're going to have a private network, you need to have trust. And that trust needs to be between the businesses that are on the system, but in mortgage finance, it also has to be for the users, the actual people that are trying to get a home loan. It's got to be trusted by them. The second thing you have to do is you have to think in terms of scale. For real estate finance in this country, there are hundreds of thousands of small businesses that make the entire industry work. You also have millions of users each year that are trying to get a home loan. So with that, we're going to show you some of the key features of this private network.
Thanks, Todd. So Todd said we have to provide the right level of trust at the proper level of scale for the concept of the private network to be viable. So we do this by being able to vet the participants that are going to be entering and accessing this private network. We're looking at a view here of someone like a lender. They're working on maybe a dozen different transactions. I can access the content, the documents, the messages that have happened within any one of these, compared to an alternative view of something like a consumer, who may be involved in one, two, just a couple of these transactions over their lifetime. The key is for those professional users, whether you're a lender, an appraiser, a title agent, you have the ability to do two key things. Leverage something like this unique user experience that we're showing you here today. Directly integrate these services into your platforms using our rich API layer, and then the ability to invite all of those other participants specifically to the individual transaction that they'll be a part of. There's not a way to provide this level of trust using email.
So once you've established this trust within the network, you then have the next step that you want to do is you need to be able to bridge between the organizations. But bridging just the organizations is not enough. You need to connect at the actual transaction level, because that's really where all of the work takes place in a mortgage. From the time you take the application, processing that all the way through to get to closing, and even post-closing and funding, that's where all the work is. So you actually need to connect. For every individual transaction, you need to connect at that deep transaction level.
So that concept of the transaction bridge is something we refer to as the living folder. So as I access 1999 Broadway, you see on the screens behind me, I'm loaded into that individual folder. I see the files and the messages that are part of the transaction. This is unlike the traditional concept of a vault or a digital room where content needs to be checked in or checked out. This is designed to be a living, evolving means of exchanging that information. I have the ability to see the folder contacts, the folks who have been engaged as part of this transaction, add them to a message. But what you don't see is the concept of a room administrator, somebody managing complex permissions, who can see what types of documents. All of that is naturally managed by the system itself. If you want somebody to see something, you share it with them. There's not a way to get that level of depth of connectivity or that level of control using an email system.
So once we've got this established trust and we've now connected a transaction, now we have the ability to leverage the power of the network to help us to make the process work better. So in the mortgage industry, whenever something changes, like fees or different costs associated with the loan, the normal way to communicate that is someone prepares the document, sends it over, and says, take a look at this, which the user has to then read, figure out what's changed from the last version, and then process that new data. Well, it's a very human-based activity. But when you tap into the power of the network then can be intelligent enough to look into that transaction and look at the documents that are, and then the network can tell the user what has actually changed.
So this is actually my favorite part. Ultimately, a smart network means providing automation wherever possible. So I can select two different versions of an individual document, and go to compare those. What the system will do is then process those two different versions of the document and provide me a PDF that has highlighted all of the places where we have differences between the two. So whether I'm looking to manage differences in fees that might impact a borrower at the closing table, I can see here that our title insurance fee changed, and as I mouse over it, specifically it changed from $525 down to $500. Those hours of time that staff spend doing the stare and compare exercise are over. Ultimately, no secure communication tool can provide that level of automated analysis for you.
So once we've got the power of the network and it's now connected and it's working, we can now start to look at other things like, how can we accelerate this process? So if you think about today, about email, what it takes to run your email inbox, it's really no different in the mortgage industry. The processor's getting 100, 150 messages a day. They have to read each message, figure out what does this actually apply to in the loan, and which loan does it even apply to? Well, that creates bottlenecks and processing challenges that, of course, the inbox really can't overcome so long as you're working like that.
That's right. So what we ultimately try to provide in eliminating the inbox is adding things like badges, notifications, alerts that ultimately guide that contextual user experience. I'm always within the transaction. I know the messaging that I'm looking for, and I can find exactly what I need quickly. There's not a way that we can break down these communication silos that technologies like email create using an outdated email system.
So the next thing, and the last feature that we're going to try and show you today, is that once we've got this connection between systems, transactions, operating in a secure environment, we now have the ability to connect people in real time.
We're using a live chat system that allows me to see who's involved in the transaction and engage in that live dialogue, recognizing they're here within the system. So I'm going to shoot Amy a quick message. And then when I come over to Amy's view, you'll see she's actually had a chat notification pop up right here on the screen, keeping that type of real-time interaction live within the system.
So email is simply unacceptable in a multi-trillion-dollar industry like the mortgage finance industry. There's now a superior alternative, and that superior alternative is the private network for the industry called Collaboration Center. Thank you for your time.